Welcome to the Karma Army. Names and details have been changed, but the justice? Every word of it is real. I have never been entirely comfortable with numbers. That is the honest starting point for this story, because it matters more than almost anything else that follows. I want to say that plainly before I say anything else, because the discomfort I had with the financial detail of my own business was not incidental to what happened. It was the gap that someone walked through quietly over 18 months without me noticing. I built a property management company over 9 years. Good steady work, managing residential and small commercial properties across 2 counties. Reliable, recurring income from management fees, client relationships built carefully over time. I understood the shape of the business. I knew whether it was growing or contracting. I could read a summary, P&L, and tell you the broad direction. But the granular mechanics, the line-by-line reconciliations, the month-end closes, the client payment schedules matched against bank receipts, that had always been someone else's domain. I employed people for it because they were better at it than I was, and because I was more productively deployed elsewhere. I am not offering this as an excuse. I'm offering it as fact, because it is part of the story, and because I have spent a great deal of time since all of this happened sitting honestly with the question of what I could have done differently. The answer is that I could have looked more closely, more often. I didn't. That is simply true. We advertised for an office manager and bookkeeper in March 2019. The role was the spine of the operation. Whoever held it would be handling client payments, processing supplier invoices, running payroll, maintaining the account's software, and producing the monthly summary reports I used to track the business's performance. For a company of our size, 12 staff at our peak, this person was, in practical terms, the financial infrastructure. I interviewed 6 candidates. Teresa Walsh was the strongest by some distance. She was in her mid-40s, measured, articulate, visibly organized in the way that people become when they've spent years making systems work. Her references were excellent. 2 former employers spoke warmly and specifically about her in writing. The word meticulous appeared in both references independently. One reference came from a firm of solicitors where she had apparently worked for 3 years. The writer described her as the most capable office manager the firm had employed in over a decade. She arrived at interview with a folder of certifications, a CV that was precise and detailed, and answers to every question that were confident without being arrogant. I offered her the job the following day. For 11 months, she was everything those references described. The office ran with a quality it hadn't had before. Invoices went out on time. Client payments were logged promptly and accurately. Payroll ran cleanly. The account software, which had always had a somewhat disorganized quality under previous management, became clean, well-maintained, navigable. My external accountant, reviewing the quarterly figures at the end of 2019, remarked that the bookkeeping had improved considerably. I told him we'd hired well. He agreed. I believed it completely, and I had every reason to. The first discrepancy I noticed was in October 2020. A property owner I had worked with for 6 years, a client whose quarterly management fee was £3,200, had made their payment. I knew because I happened to see the notification come through on my phone while I was in a meeting. That evening, checking something unrelated in the account's software, I noticed the payment wasn't there. Not misfiled, not in a subcategory I'd overlooked, not visible. I mentioned it to Teresa the following morning. She was unhurried. She pulled up the software, gave a brief explanation about a timing issue in how certain client codes were being reconciled, and walked me through where the payment had been filed, in a different subcategory than I'd been looking in, but present. The explanation was coherent. I accepted it and moved on. A month later, it happened again. A different client, a smaller amount, £1,800. In the bank, not immediately visible in the software. Teresa's explanation this time was different in its specifics: a categorization decision, a batch processing matter, something in the technical architecture of the system. But it was similar in its shape: calm, specific, reasonable. I accepted it. What I felt in the months that followed was not yet suspicion. It was something more diffuse than that. A low, persistent unease that I kept overriding because Teresa was clearly competent, because the business overall was performing well, because her explanations were coherent on each individual occasion, and because, and this is the part I have to be most honest about, I didn't entirely trust my own ability to push back on what she was telling me when the subject was finance. There is a particular kind of social gravity that operates when someone who knows more than you about a subject gives you a detailed, confident explanation. It pulls toward acceptance. I felt that pull, and I followed it for longer than I should have. By February 2021, I had noted 4 separate occasions on which payments visible in the bank had required explanation before appearing in the software. 4. Each explanation different in detail, identical in function, to provide a reason plausible enough that I didn't pursue it. Taken individually, each one could perhaps be explained. Together, they were a pattern, and a pattern deserves more than individual acceptance. I contacted a forensic accountant without telling Teresa. I gave him read access to the account's software and 3 years of bank statements, and told him I had concerns about reconciliation accuracy. I didn't specify what I suspected because I didn't want to frame the investigation with assumptions. I asked him to review the records independently and tell me what he found. He came back to me in 3 weeks. The report was 41 pages. I read it at my kitchen table on a Wednesday evening. I'd made tea. It went cold somewhere around page 8. The opening summary was direct and unambiguous. Over an 18-month period between April 2019 and October 2020, a total of £87,460 had been systematically diverted from client payment receipts into an account that did not belong to the business, any of its clients, or any of its recognized suppliers. The account was registered in a name I had never seen before: £87,460. I want to sit with that number for a moment because it deserves to be. It is not abstract. It is 6 months of payroll for 12 people. It is the accumulated management fees from years of careful work, built client relationship by client relationship across 2 counties over nearly a decade. It is small amounts, moved quietly, entry by entry, month after month, by a woman who came in every morning and made the office work better than it ever had. The forensic report was methodical in a way I found almost hypnotic to read. It showed every diverted transaction: the date, the originating client account, the receiving account number. It showed how the entries in the account software had been adjusted to conceal the movements, reclassifications, and subcategory edits that required a detailed understanding of the software's architecture and a clear knowledge of where its oversight controls were weakest. This was not opportunistic. This was designed from the beginning or close to it with the specific intention of not being found. When our solicitors team investigated Teresa's references, they found something significant. The solicitor's firm that had provided the most impressive reference, the one describing her as the most capable office manager they had employed in a decade, had no record of her working there in the role she described. The signatory of the reference letter, when contacted directly, stated that Teresa had left that firm under circumstances that were materially different from those the reference implied, and that she had been specifically requested not to use the firm as a reference. Someone had written and signed that reference without authorization. Whether Teresa had arranged this herself or had found another means to produce it, I cannot say definitively. What I can say is that the reference that had most persuaded me she was the right person for this role was, at least in part, fraudulent. She had walked into my business on false foundations and then built something worse on top of them. We secured a civil judgment within 7 months of the forensic report. The judgment included a charging order against a property Teresa owned jointly with a family member, a mortgage-free flat that represented the most significant recoverable asset. A charging order doesn't deliver immediate funds. It secures the debt against the property and makes it enforceable on sale. It means the debt travels with the asset. It is not nothing. The criminal proceedings took longer. Teresa initially indicated she would contest the charges. Her defense involved the suggestion that the account to which the funds had been directed had been set up for a legitimate business purpose, and that the situation had arisen through miscommunication rather than deliberate fraud. The forensic accountant gave evidence over approximately 2 hours. The consistency of the diversion pattern, the sophistication of the concealment within the software, the duration of 18 months, these things made the miscommunication argument difficult to sustain in the presence of the evidence. Teresa entered a guilty plea before the case reached its conclusion. The judge's remarks at sentencing were precise and pointed. He noted that she had been entrusted with a position of significant financial responsibility and had held that position while systematically exploiting it over an extended period. The phrase he chose, which I have returned to many times since, was sustained abuse of a position of trust. She received a suspended sentence of 18 months and 200 hours of community service. She did not receive a custodial sentence. I know some people, when they hear that, feel it isn't enough. My own feelings are more complicated. The civil judgment sits against her property. The criminal conviction is on her record permanently. The charging order means the debt waits for her on the sale of that flat. These consequences are real, even if they are not the instinctively proportionate ones. What I think about most now is not the sum of money and not the outcome of the proceedings. It is the architecture of the thing. She came in every morning. She managed the office with genuine skill. She was warm with the team. She remembered birthdays. She solved problems before they reached me. And while she was doing all of that, she was also, every week or two, making small entries in accounting software that moved money that wasn't hers into an account that wasn't ours. And then, when questions arose, providing explanations so composed and specific that I walked away satisfied every single time. Trust used as a weapon looks nothing like aggression. It looks like competence. It looks like reliability. It looks like someone solving your problems with one hand while creating a much larger one, entirely out of your sight, with the other. After Teresa, I restructured the financial oversight of the business completely. an external bookkeeper working 3 days a week, reporting independently to both me and my external accountant. A monthly reconciliation meeting I attend personally, regardless of everything else. I am still not someone who finds numbers natural, but I look at them now. I look at them with the particular attention of someone who once didn't and paid for it. There is something else worth saying, which is about the particular loneliness of this kind of discovery. Fraud by someone you trusted is not just a financial event. It is a reorganization of your understanding of a period of time you thought you understood already. Every memory of Teresa being good at her job, every conversation where she explained something patiently, every moment where I accepted her explanation and moved on, all of that gets re-examined in the light of what the forensic report contained. You are not just dealing with the crime. You are dealing with the retrospective knowledge that you were deceived throughout a period you experienced as entirely normal. That is a strange and unsettling thing to carry, and it takes time to put down. I have put it down, mostly. The business recovered. Smaller than at its peak, but tighter. Better understood by the person whose name is on it. I am part of the Karma Army. And if you have ever placed your trust in someone and watched them quietly convert that trust into a transaction, carefully over months, with a smile and an explanation ready each time you notice something, then you know why we tell these stories. Subscribe. Leave a comment. Trust is not weakness, but it must never go unwatched.